one would good one would be to play that one.
For the Russian.
Yeah, because it's really pretty. And you drop it.
I'm gonna do that.
Point of view.
I forget to do this.
I gotta remember to figure that thing out. I'm text messages too. Somebody over here.
What do you mean?
She usually shows it right here. I think some of the trolls get bored when you're not talking right away, so they jump right off.
Yeah. So you have one.
One over here. Oh, there we go. What's up, Rob? Used to work with Charlie's up here. He lives in Alabama now. Just about to get started.
Because I show different numbers there and there. Maybe there's a lot.
You want to do the Siri thing.
I think, you know what? No. I think when someone first gets on, it does that automatically. I meant to look at that.
Because they just joined.
Yeah.
I wonder why that's the thing.
I don't know.
Lack of imagination, I guess.
Right.
All right, we're going to have a conspiracy query number 1.
Yeah.
Top of the news right now.
And if you're listening, tell me if you can hear this. How old is Chris Cuomo? Okay, I got to do it again. Hold on. How old is Chris Cuomo?
Chris Cuomo is 49 years old.
Oh, they changed it.
They changed it.
Oh my gosh, they
fixed
fixed
the glitch.
it. It's okay. When you were asking
Siri.
5 minutes ago, if you asked Siri how old Chris Cuomo, it would answer
Frito.
I know some of you have already seen that out there. It would say Frito Cuomo is 49 years old. They changed that. So that probably happened. When did I first saw it? When you were telling me about it.
Yeah, and then you did it 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Oh well.
And it worked.
Siri got a hold of that and changed it back into his real name.
Can't have anybody making fun of libs.
Oh my gosh, we should have recorded it. Somebody's got it.
They
Somebody's.
do. I know they have the screenshots.
All right. All right. That's all right. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started. This is our Ides of August video. This is me and my brother Louis that we do every month on the Ides. And last month we talked about Mark Dutroux and
Epstein.
Epstein. Epstein was alive.
Talked a little about Laura Silsby. Talking about all these pedophile rings and
Epstein was alive when we talked about him.
yeah.
I think we may have mentioned we didn't know how long he might.
Well, you know, that's one of the original so-called conspiracy theories, and we're going to talk about where conspiracy theory comes from. The actually using it in jargon here in recent history, but
You know,
one of the original
Well,
conspiracy theories with Epstein is that we were conspiracy theorists when we believed that Epstein would not live to testify. What do you know?
all right, and then when he dies, and we all start talking about you know what happened. He was supposed to be on suicide watch. Then the mainstream media comes up with all these stories where they start painting us all as conspiracy theories. But I know most of you know this, that conspiracy theory as a term was created in the late 60s by the CIA. They're the ones that coined the term. And the goal of it was a psyops. It was like, it was a psychological warfare. And they created it so they accused theorists of having financial interest in promoting conspiracy theories. The CIA's clandestine services unit created the arguments for attacking conspiracy theories as unreliable in the 60s as part of its psychological warfare operations. And that was after...
and this comes out of the Warren Commission's look into the JFK assassination.
People didn't buy that.
And so more and more people in the late 60s, around 67, 68, were questioning weren't believing just everything about what the Warren Commission came up with. And the CIA was kind of whined about that, so they had internal memos and things.
They didn't like that. We didn't believe what they were. We didn't buy what they were selling.
So they whined about that and talked about how they could fight that. So they used their links with the mainstream media, corporate media, which their links go back with the New York Times and Washington Post back into the 50s and probably the late 40s too. They've been using these guys for a long time, and it's no wonder that after the WikiLeaks stuff came out and we saw emails and stuff that you see people from Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, they were linked to the intelligence communities. They were getting all these leaks and publishing it. And they're not reporters; they're disseminators.
There's no telling how many actually work for them. I mean, after Operation Mockingbird, that was the one, right?
Church committee.
Yeah. So when did that end, and did they leave anything in place?
So we got a lot of homework for people if they want to do it. Is that get a pen and paper out and write some things down. There's a bunch of stuff back in our past that you can find yourself that we found, and you can go down all these rabbit holes and see for yourself. Don't take our word for it.
Yeah, I don't want you to take our word for it. I want you to Google it, because you'll have these same.
And tweet at us and prove us wrong.
Right. And these same mainstream media people who try to downplay or minimize what we're saying about Epstein by calling us conspiracy theorists, you can Google this stuff yourself, and it comes up in mainstream media articles. So are they?
They reported this themselves.
Are they the conspiracy theorists if they're reporting on these things that?
It's just that they use their main tool, which is called omission, to not report on this stuff anymore. So get your pen and paper out and write some things down, and what piques your interest, take a look at it. One of the ones that we addressed, and actually we wanted to go into Dutroux again and kind of touch base with it again.
Oh yeah,
because
so it was
Dutroux's a big one.
It was a popular, usually when we do our videos, people watch live and watch that night, and you might have a few days where people come back to watch it, but it doesn't. This last video had more, even though it wasn't one of our most watched videos, it's one of our most
watched. It's like they watched the replay.
Enough people without me. I'm not promoting it every day, and people are just interested in that topic. But Mark Dutroux is our Jeffrey Epstein. He was a pedophile in Belgium that was supplying the wealthy elites with young kids, and somehow they managed to cut it off at just him. He's in jail, probably for life, but the bigger pedo ring is still out there.
And a lot of similarities with the Epstein case is that the authorities did not do a lot of due diligence. They had lots of DNA evidence that they never tested. And the prosecutors are actually on record in interviews saying, well, we had the perpetrator. We didn't need to test all these hair samples. And they just brushed stuff under the rug.
They had like 6,000 samples in the dungeon that Mark Dutroux had in one of his houses. They had like 6,000 samples that I think it identified at least 25 people that have not been identified that we know who
they ran no tests. Plus, they removed the judge in the case. And over in Belgium, the judge is actually kind of like the prosecutor as well.
He's the one that asks questions, and
he was the one that asked
he investigates.
Questions. He was actually, they credit with actually finding the two girls alive because he pushed the guys while they were with the accomplices of Dutroux while they were in prison. But shortly after, he was taken off and another judge was put on, and this guy, he was terrible. And of course, he's dead now too. And that's another thing with the Dutroux case. It's like 20 potential witnesses died.
Yeah, they kind of
mysterious deaths.
It's like the Clinton body count list. You have, I don't know whose body count list that was, who was running that behind it. It wasn't Mark Dutroux. It's like Epstein. He's the lower level guy that's just supplying the ring.
Or he was a lower level version of Epstein.
Yeah.
But he did the same thing.
But even at being lower level, he was on public assistance and.
Oh yeah, he was after because remember his first stint in prison was for kidnapping and raping girls.
Right.
He got out early, and then was able to do the big crime spree that rocked Belgium in the 1990s. He gets out early, and when he gets out, he convinced the prison psychiatrist of his disability. So after he was released from prison for kidnapping and raping little girls, he went on a state pension for disability.
Yeah,
and he had like
seven
properties throughout Belgium.
Somebody gave him those properties, and
one of them had a dungeon.
And
two of the girls.
I don't know which house he was building where he was trying to have like a city underneath the.
He was looking at for that. He was dreaming at this part, but he was looking at old abandoned mines and stuff where he was going to have this underground city where he was going to breed with all these children.
Speaking of breeding,
Epstein had the same thing.
Epstein, John of God, Keith Raniere.
Well, Epstein, it was revealed he wanted to plant his
seed all over.
He wanted to
see the DNA, but so did John of God and Keith Raniere, because they thought their DNA was so much better than everyone else. Was there anything more on the Mark Dutroux? Weren't you reading something?
Yeah, I didn't quite finish it. It was a very long one.
Okay. It has to do with Julian Assange.
Guys, Google or DuckDuckGo, Mark Dutroux. D-O, it's right here. D-U-T-R-O-U-X. Belgium. And there's tons.
And Julian Assange was involved with releasing some documents for the Dutroux case, and he had created it was a very long dossier. He compiled this really long dossier of leaks that he had obtained, and it apparently was so good and revealing that the authorities tried to get him to take that dossier down, but he never did. But I know that dossier and the information that he had helped bring.
And he has a lot of dumps about Epstein as well, and there's a reason that he's
sitting in jail,
being treated the way he is right now. There's something tied in there too.
Right.
Here's another one we talked about a couple of times before. The Dreyfus affair happened around the turn of the century in France, early 1900s, but actually it crossed it started in late 1890s, went into
late 1890s,
1900s.
And then he was let out at like 1904.
And that was a conspiracy, and that was kind of like the whole Russiagate stuff with the dossier, except they call it a bordereau.
Yeah.
They put some nice terms on something and make it seem bigger than it really is, and just hammer that home. But Dreyfus was a Jewish officer in the French army,
right? And
by all accounts, from what you can see now, he was a very loyal person. But he was set up because it was actually a cover up for something else,
right?
Kind of like the
if you read it, it reads like the whole Trump Russia thing. with Trump
The
being the
whole
fall guy, or
investigation
even
was a
we have
cover-up.
several fall guys in our. We don't have just one Dreyfus in this. We have Trump, we have Flynn,
General Flynn,
Roger Stone, Manafort.
Papadopoulos.
Um,
People that have been, in the crimes that everybody talks about, they use numbers like 25 convictions
Right.
or 25 indictments. It's like, okay, so 12 of them are against some Russians that we're never going to see.
right.
Now, one did show up, and it's
And that judge, and that has, he's not really buying the government's story.
Yeah.
Because they can't really prove their case.
The FBI is trying to change how things are going to be presented. The judge is saying, no, you can't do that now. So, look up Dreyfus Affair in France. That's it. And there were movies made about it.
It's big, and if you know anybody from France, they know about the Dreyfus Affair.
Mm-hmm. It's still affecting them with their morale, with their army, and everything. It was a very traumatic time for that country. Look at, and we already touched on it with the CIA, but Operation Mockingbird, and look up Church Committee, 1975. These congressional hearings over rogue operations in the CIA. And just briefly, the Manhattan Project. Everybody's heard of the Manhattan Project. Another conspiracy.
Keep that in mind. These are all conspiracy theories. They're making fun of us for talking about Epstein dying. The guy that holds the keys to powerful people being brought down. He dies while on suicide watch. So that's all a conspiracy.
Another point about Epstein is that particular jail has not had anybody die by suicide in over 40 years.
Right.
And so the most high-profile prisoner you have who supposedly tried to commit suicide 2 weeks before is found dead. And this, so
the day after
they call you names when you question.
He's found out the day after.
After two more names were named.
No, the documents. Those documents.
Yeah, but we get 2 more names out of the documents.
Right.
We get former New Mexico governor and
Bill
Clinton
Richardson,
cabinet official Bill Richardson,
and then the senator.
And then George Mitchell, former
Mitchell.
Former Senate Majority Leader.
Right, and then it also contradicts that testimony, the documents that were released. And it contradicts Bill Clinton's statement that he released after Jeffrey Epstein was in jail, because one of the girls said that she remembers he threw a big, huge celebration on the island.
Right. And then here's 2 different ones that tie into the same country, Iraq. So in 1990, there was a run. Saddam Hussein had invaded Kuwait and taken over Kuwait, and of course we're all over there because protect the oil and stuff.
Right.
But there was one of the stories they used I think it was at the UN.
Yeah. No, I want to say it was in Congress.
Was it I think
because
they got him. I think they did get her into the U.S. This girl claimed to have seen Iraqi soldiers pulling babies out of incubators in Kuwait.
And she was the daughter of a
high-level diplomat in Kuwait.
From Kuwait.
And it was
nobody knew that. She was just supposed to be just some
U.S.
random
politicians got her in,
witness.
and so we end up in a war in Iraq. Thank Lord we didn't stay long, but we did have a presence there with no-fly zones and stuff. But this girl's name, you guys, like I said, get a pen and paper and look this stuff up yourself, and then get back to us at Lewis Everett 3 on Twitter, and for Yvonne it's at _ Yvonne Burton, Burton. If you don't like what we're saying, prove us wrong. But this girl's name was Nayirah, Nayyirah.
Yeah.
And it was, but we saw the big story, babies being taken, but we didn't see.
You should watch the video. There's videos of her and her testimony, so you can watch her, and she's, played in the park, and everybody's outraged. We've got to do something. Yeah, we've got to go to war.
And I was duped back then. We did not have access to information like we do now.
And so they sent our sons and daughters to war for a lie.
And by the way, take note in the title. We called this show Conspiracy Queries.
Yeah.
And, screw that conspiracy theory crap, because that was made up by the CIA in 1967 anyway.
To discredit people.
But we're questioning. We're asking questions. You ought to be able to speak the truth.
It stinks to high heaven.
It stinks. And when they call you names to discredit you, they don't attack the argument. And that's.
And so when they do that, so it's a strategy when they do that to smear you. So I would just like to suggest when when you're tweeting about something that or you see one of these mainstream media people mocking people that are talking about conspiracy theories that we know are actually true, I think the best thing you could do is quote tweet or reply to them another news story that was covered by the mainstream media. Oh, is that like a conspiracy theory? Like this was a conspiracy theory? Wink, wink.
It used to be the media was suspicious of government, suspicious especially of the intelligence community.
Right.
Now they love the intelligence community. They can do no wrong. So the second part 2 of Iraq is the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq for the lead up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
2002 was the lead up.
And so 500,000 Iraqis died, and I don't know how many of our soldiers died, but if you really want talking about the conspiracy on WMDs, Google Robert Mueller and WMDs, and you'll see about a minute video on YouTube where he's discussing the WMDs. That's Robert Mueller, the same dude that just got through testifying that we just saw is a buffoon.
And you know what? We don't have him on our notes, but let's stop on Robert Mueller for a minute, because that's a freaking rabbit hole of lies and deception going back to the 80s when he was U.S. Attorney in San Francisco.
Right.
Where he caught the eye of everybody talks about Mueller and Comey.
They're lifelong they always call them
Republicans.
lifelong Republicans, and they just repeat it because
both of these guys got their start in the Justice Department because Eric Holder took a shine to them.
Yeah, and he recommended them both to Clinton, because they're such dedicated lifelong Republicans, and we all know how Eric Holder loves him some lifelong Republicans.
Right. And so that just tells you the part that both sides play. It's just an act.
Yeah.
It's a big stage, especially federal government, but it goes down to the state level as well.
And Robert Mueller testifying I think that was a turning point.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people watched that, even people that were on that side and probably thought, what the hell?
Oh, you could tell the Democrats during the hearings were just like, oh my God, we've started a train wreck and we can't get
right. And when we
stop.
were watching it, we were kind of mad at Devin Nunes at the end for not just, but actually it turned out he was having a little compassion because he'd already been beaten.
Well, he was pulling the 7th inning rule, scores at a certain point.
Yeah.
Mercy rule, just go ahead and
We're
cut
not
it.
going to beat a dead
Stop.
horse. It's already dead. This next one, I didn't know about this one. But
I just wrote BCCI down. It's a big bank that went down in the 90s. Lots of corruption. Just to put BCCI into Google, and a lot of stuff's going to pop up for you. A lot of big people were tied into that. And
it was a banking scandal.
Mm-hmm. You fast forward to the 2000s.
What was the banking scandal that McCain and the Keating Five? That's not part of that?
No.
That was another banking
That's
scandal.
another one.
And then we had
And then we forgot the Keating Five, and then you had the House Bank scandal.
Right.
Where
they were
all
writing
drawing
checks. We had
checks
Ford,
off money they didn't know,
our own.
that they didn't have.
Ford wide open. Yeah. Well, it wasn't just Bush. I mean, Ronald Reagan.
And that's the thing. It's not just Bush or Reagan. Reagan said he was going to fix things, and he let them all in.
He did amnesty.
And that's the thing. You guys have got to get out of. Here's the sides. The sides aren't Republican or Democrat, and the sides are not liberal or conservative. The sides are. It's getting down very simple.
Like
it's evil and good.
Yeah, and you've got these elite people who think they should be running things and ruling things. Yeah, Texas and California too. And what they've done in California, Reagan's amnesty changed California blue forever. I think. And then Texas, they're working on Texas. I hope it's not close to being done. But
We're getting sworn at.
there are.
But so.
And I've always loved Reagan, but I the more and more I learn, he's also the one that brought in no-fault divorce.
Right. He was going to get rid of abortions.
Yeah.
And so, but back to Mueller real quick. Paragon of integrity, stoic. And, you guys Google his hearings. If you didn't watch these hearings a few weeks ago, the man is not smart.
He's not confident. He's out of his league.
He was out of his league. And
so
I think he was a prop.
That's why he said in that press conference when he was recapping his
That he wasn't going to take any more questions.
Yeah, that he was not going to testify. That
he wanted to make the report be stand and that's it. I don't have to say anything else.
Right.
So you take Mike Mueller, 80s, San Francisco. Von's got a story about this on the blog, redpillsentinel.com. And so
Yeah.
go
So
into it.
the first prominent thing that he took over, it was a Hell's Angels. It kind of reminded me of the fiasco that happened recently. It was Hell's Angels? It was a motorcycle club a few years ago where there was a
Back in
mass
the
shooting.
80s.
No, I'm talking.
Oh, no. Okay.
I'm talking about one recently
Okay.
where there was a mass shooting and they arrested like 100 and something of the whole motorcycle club. And when it was all said and done, there were no convictions. All charges were thrown out, and it was shown in there that there had been like 9 undercover FBI agents, and actually it was an FBI agent.
And we're going to cover a key points that it all actually ends up with Epstein.
Yeah.
So next is Asimov.
Yeah, but hold on, let me finish
Okay.
this because I was connecting these to that first one with Mueller in California. This shootout in Hell's Angel, it's been a long time since we thought of like motorcycle clubs like really causing trouble. Maybe they're into things, I don't know, but they're not hurting anybody. So anyway, there was a shootout, and I don't know how many people died, but when the dust had settled, it was learned that it was an FBI agent who had fired the first shot, and there was like 9 undercover FBI. There was like more not bad guys that were from the FBI than in the motorcycle club.
Mm-hmm.
And so back in the Hell's Angels, there was a shootout. It was something similar. So Mueller came in after the fact. He was supposed to like investigate and figure out what happened. And it kind of reminds me of this whole Trump Russia thing. He couldn't make anything. He couldn't make it work. But that was his first rodeo, and I think it was the first time that he showed, whoever, Eric Cole or whoever, okay, I'll do whatever it is you need me to do.
He'll play ball.
Yeah.
So then
And then it
Asimov,
was David Asimov, who was the son of Isaac
famous
Asimov.
author Isaac Asimov.
They raided his home because he was a child porn. He was into child porn. It was in the beginning days of the internet, and somehow the authorities had gotten wind of it. And he wasn't just sharing it; he was producing it. And the local authorities were investigating it, and then it somehow got turned over to federal authorities and the U.S. attorneys there to Mueller, and he didn't serve a day in jail.
No. He got 6 months, but I guess it was
suspended. It was like time served or.
But there was also one of the investigators actually was quoted in the paper as saying this wasn't just a guy watching porn, child porn.
It was like a one-stop shop for everything. It was production. It was distribution. It was.
And this is in the 80s, mid 80s.
It was huge.
So this was VHS.
So he comes in. He doesn't serve any time. You're looking at Epstein now and how he got the slap on the wrist. That also happened under Mueller.
Yeah.
Everybody looks
at that. And then you look at Bob Mueller. He's a great protector of the U.S. as an FBI director in the past. Everybody remembers the Boston bombings. Russia. And here's another thing. How many times has there been a terrorist attack on our soil? The Boston bombings, Southern California, Pulse nightclub, where the perpetrator was known to the FBI before they did it. The kid in Parkland and the hijackers, they were known to the FBI before they attacked us. So those 2 kids, those Saranov brothers, bombed the Boston Marathon. The older brother was known to the FBI for years. He was an asset.
He was an asset. Yeah.
And Russia warned the FBI about him. And somehow this guy, people, you may not know about Chechnya back in the days, but
Chechnya's bad.
Bad area. And ISIS was there.
Speaking of, if you want to know how bad the Muslims, how radical they are, Google Beslan.
Beslan.
Beslan. And I won't go into it, but it was a school.
It was a school in Russia.
It was an elementary school. That was
Look what
raided,
they did there.
And they raided it and held it hostage for 3 days in the heat. Like, think of the heat that we have now.
And this older Sarnav brother traveled to Chechnya, I think, twice.
Yeah.
And he did it without a passport. And he was not a U.S. citizen. So just think about those. Google those.
So Russia calls the FBI and says, hey guys, you might want to put this guy on your radar. Both these brothers on your radar. Because actually, I think the older brother had gone there twice with the younger brother had gone the second time.
Rolling Stone cover boy, exactly.
Yeah,
The younger brother,
You
they
know,
made him the Rolling
they did
Stone.
to him. They made him look, good, like the way they glamorize Che Guevara, the butcher of La Cabana. Yeah, they made him glamorous.
And like I said just a while ago, is don't take our word for it. It's out there. You can find
Google it.
this.
So Russia calls the FBI and says, "Hey, these guys have been to Chechnya, and we think they might be radicalized. You might have a problem on your hands." The FBI did no follow up, and there's a book called Maximum Harm about somebody who investigated the whole Boston bombing, and the FBI. Okay, so the local Boston PD was investigating that, but the FBI put under Mueller put 2 agents down there to help, if you know what I mean. But if you talk to the Boston PD, they don't think they were there to help.
The Boston police were highly upset with the cooperation they were getting from so everybody thinks, the FBI comes in and supports the local authorities in their investigations on these big cases.
It's just like
and
with
they're
Epstein in Palm Beach, the Palm Beach Police Department. That I can't remember the guy's name. He died last year.
Chief of police.
Yeah, the chief of police. They did a really good and thorough investigation. It's where we got all the. If you go to the Daily Mail, they seem to have the best pictures of like Pedophile Island and all that. They investigated it thoroughly, and the chief of police was livid when he found out he had been given that slap up that sweet plea deal, and
I believe he ended up resigning.
he resigned after that. And then funny how he died last year at the age of 50. He was in great health, but they said after a short illness. That seems strange to me, but he knew all the dirty.
And it was one last thing with Mueller. I think he was in charge of the FBI when the Pulse nightclub shooting happened in Orlando. That guy, once again, known to the FBI. The man's dad was an FBI asset.
Was that
Also,
the one that showed up at Hillary Clinton's?
He was at Hillary Clinton's rally or whatever.
Yeah.
I think he had donated. The mother, I believe, actually though, called the FBI or somebody and just to say, "Hey, my son's dangerous."
Right.
How many times the Parkland shooter in Florida as well?
This recent one, there's one I'm thinking of, or was it Dutro's mom that said, "Don't let him out"?
She called.
And even when he was out, she was saying, "I think he's kidnapping
I think he's
girls."
still doing it.
Like she was telling them exactly what she.
Oh, I remember the local police. They had tapes that they seized from Dutro's apartment. And if you join late, Dutro's in the beginning of this, but Dutreux Dutroux, Mark Dutroux in Belgium, horrible serial killer, child pedophile, just a rapist, just a horrible man. But they seized tapes from him, and then they claimed that they never viewed them because they didn't have a player.
Yeah, they didn't. And if they had viewed it, they would have seen Dutroux building the dungeon that those girls.
So then you get to Epstein. Mueller was in charge of the FBI when that sweet deal he got.
Comey, I think, was under him.
Yeah, Comey was there.
They all knew.
It might have been either the FBI or the Justice Department. They were always flip-flopping.
Yeah, and everybody wants to talk about. I'm no fan of Alexander Acosta, and he gave him the sweet plea deal that he got.
But he did come in late. The stuff was in the works before he got there. But still, he should have.
In a press conference a few weeks ago, after Epstein was arrested or whatever, the pressure was really building up on Alex. I think it was before he resigned, and I think he was trying to save his job.
He said he
was told that Epstein was intelligence. Okay, so
he belongs to intelligence.
Time out. The mainstream media wants to mock us and make fun of us because we're talking about conspiracy theories, and I mean that's a conspiracy right there. Who told Alexander Acosta that Epstein was intelligent? Who's
and
intelligent?
You know what?
Is
And take conspiracy. Conspiracy is 2 or more people getting together to plan something.
Yeah.
Contractors got together and built the house you're living in.
That's not a tinfoil hat. That's just kind of normal to wonder. Oh yeah.
And speaking of intelligence, our great CIA.
You need to Google this guy.
Google Gary Webb and put Dark Alliance with it.
You could also put the Intercept. Just recently did a really good article on Gary Webb that recaps all of this.
And and I was duped by a lot of this stuff too. And when I used to hear the rumors back in the 80s and 90s that the CIA is the ones that brought crack cocaine into the minority neighborhoods. And now,
I didn't believe it.
And now, You know, they probably did.
They did. Gary Webb had an expose that he published, I think, in the San Jose Mercury or some
Yeah,
just
it's San Jose. Mercury.
smaller outlet where he had done a whole investigation and he wrote about it. And it turns out through documents that have been released in the National Archives that he was right. So Gary Webb ended up, so he's a well-respected reporter. Like,
exactly. That's
Yeah.
a good point. Is CNN is on hand, and you know what? See, why is CNN on hand when the FBI raided Roger Stone's house? They were in place with cameras in place when they raided his house.
funny how you didn't see CNN on hand when they were arresting Jeffrey Epstein.
But funny you mentioned that, because during the Mueller hearings, that was brought up to Mueller, and he would not answer it.
Right.
He didn't deny it either, because they asked him point blank, "Did you give a heads up? Did your office give a heads up to CNN that you were about to raid Roger Stone's house?"
Right.
And I'm not, go ahead, whatever you want to say about Roger Stone, but the thing about justice in America is supposed to be is that everybody's treated the same.
Yeah.
And they're not, because the charges of him and Manafort and everybody, a whole bunch of people are guilty of the same things, and they're let go. And the stuff that Manafort is in prison for has not been prosecuted before, I don't even
Right.
think.
No, it hasn't.
But it's
And
for FARA violations, maybe.
so he's serving more time than Jeffrey Epstein ever thought about serving.
And harder time.
Yeah. Because they put him in solitary trying to break him, to give them whatever it is they wanted.
And for whatever reason, he's not breaking.
And
so they
even
keep
Michael
trying.
Cohen, and I'm no fan. I don't like Michael Cohen. I don't
He's a
like him at
scumbag.
all.
He's a scumbag.
But the truth of the matter is, he would not be where he is if he had
All of
supported.
these people are being
Hillary
prosecuted
Clinton.
because they
Supported
are connected to Trump in somehow. And you go back to the same thing that Manafort is charged with and in prison for. I guess he's actually convicted because he pleaded guilty to some things.
Right.
The Podesta brothers,
Where are they?
and one of them is tied with Manafort on
Right.
the same stuff with Ukraine.
Tony Podesta.
Tony Podesta,
He did the same thing,
and he walked.
but he supported the right candidate.
And then who's, what? It just reminds me of also one of the main witnesses for the Mueller probe is the
Oh,
pedophile,
Nader. George Nader.
George Nader.
Yeah. So he gave them what
He's
they
con-
wanted.
he's been
He's
convicted.
been recently rearrested
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But back to the Gary Webb thing. Gary Webb was he had won awards for his writings. He was well respected in the community. If you were to talk to reporters now, then they would know exactly who you're talking about. So when he released this expose about the CIA, seeding the black communities with crack cocaine, it took only 2 months before they brought him down and started the heavy smear campaign. So what happened? So he has this expose in the San Jose Mercury, I think that's what it is, and then immediately you have other journalists and other reporters investigating Gary Webb, not his story. They go in him and they try to, they do go into his story to try to discount it and debunk it, but they're going after him.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go on this smear campaign, and the end result of it is that he kills himself, or that's with the way things are. Who
And
knows?
I believe Gary Webb is the one that had 2 bullets to the brain.
Who is
Is
it?
that the one I told you?
If that's the case, then
Because, and I saw some readings, and you'll have to dig this up again because I can't remember where I saw it. But Gary Webb supposedly committed suicide, and the coroner said yes, it was 2 bullets, but it's rare, but it's possible. And I want you to Google that and try to run that through your head. A guy shot himself through the head. Now maybe not, maybe it was the base and it came out the mouth or something. I think that's something like that. But after you've done that to yourself, you're gonna, and it was a revolver, I believe. You're gonna cock that pistol again, and you're gonna shoot yourself in the head again. And the coroner actually argued that yes, 2 bullets,
well,
2 bullets to the head.
You're just engaging in conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy query.
But the sad thing about that is, so now we've had these documents released from the National Archives that back up, and he was telling the truth.
Yeah.
Our CIA did.
They were selling drugs.
So,
They were drug running in the
while the
US.
mainstream media is going after us for talking about Epstein and conspiracy theories, they're not. Why would this seems like it ought to be a big story? Like the mainstream media ought to be, they love, they say Black Lives Matter. Well, how much damage did the CIA single-handedly do
Due to the black
to the
community.
black family? the black race here in America.
And then you get into the CIA with their operations and their planes landing in Arkansas while Bill Clinton is Attorney
Oh, so
General
if
and
that's
Governor of
true,
Arkansas.
that whole conspiracy with Bill Clinton
Yeah.
is true.
And as part of a precursor to Googling Gary Webb and the Dark Alliance, that was his series that he did. Look at Operation Paperclip. That has to do with the CIA and their relationship with big media going back into the 50s and late 40s after
Operation Paperclip was the Nazis that we brought over, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that's right. Mockingbird is Operation Mockingbird. We already mentioned that one.
But
Church Committee.
Paperclip.
But you can find stuff about how the CIA got real close in with high ups in the New York Times, Washington Post, and everybody else that came along later, CNN. I mean, they're all connected.
Do you know what the years were on Mockingbird? I just wonder.
I know that in 1975 was when the Church Committee was
So that would have been after.
investigating. So it would have been in the 60s. Gulf of Tonkin is a good one.
Yeah. Why were we? So a conspiracy theory took us to war in
Two
Vietnam.
similar things. You do Gulf of Tonkin and the USS Liberty.
Yeah. I mean, most of y'all know about the USS Liberty. It's an aircraft carrier. I don't remember where it was. But it was right before the 6-Day War or in the middle of it.
The U.S. Liberty was during the 6-Day War in June.
And Israel wanted
1967.
us in their side, like, in that war. And I mean, they sank and killed
They killed a couple of hundred. It was
I think it was
hundreds of
140.
casualties.
Yeah, it was a bunch of injuries, but there was like 140 something.
But our guys were told to stand down on helping them and also on the initial rescue.
Right.
Our people on our side and our Navy told people to stand down,
And
just like they did with Benghazi.
Here's what I don't get. That story is just hard to wrap your brain around. And so, if that's true, how come our government has never had to account to us
All right, with
for
USS
this
Liberty.
stuff? Any of it?
And then in the Gulf of Tonkin, you also have everybody knows who Jim Morrison is, the lead singer of the Doors. His dad was one of the major officers involved in that incident, the Gulf of Tonkin. I don't know why that's never talked about.
Yeah, why wouldn't that be?
So I'm querying.
Yeah, what is it? I'm just a man asking questions. No, there was something else I wanted to talk about. So, during the election when the mainstream media was demonizing people that were talking about Pizzagate and a pedo ring that was being run out of Comet Ping Pong, the main reason everybody was investigating all that stuff was because of the Podesta leaks and because of emails from a real estate agent out, who was emailing John Podesta because he had just gotten back from a stay at some Hampton house, and she wanted to know if he wanted, it looks like a pizza related map on a handkerchief. And so the mainstream media turned that into, they picked a target and they made that the target, Pizzagate, Comet Ping Pong, oh, look at these coots. And it wasn't about that. It was about pedophile rings, and they never ever talked about the contents.
Because the queries, conspiracy queries, came from the emails that we saw. And here's the thing. They jumped on the Democrat Party. They jumped on this, the Russians hacked up our emails. They never attacked the substance of the emails.
They never attacked the content, the actual emails, the words within them, like Laura Silsby.
Yeah.
So Laura Silsby's trying to traffic children out of Haiti. Bill Clinton goes down there to get her sentence.
She gets busted, and she gets.
Her lawyer
is
later busted for child sex trafficking. So.
And people are still people still can't find out the reason why the Clintons had such an interest in Laura Silsby in the first place. Nobody can figure out where.
She was supposed to be a Christian minister. Yeah, they love them some Christian ministers, don't they?
Yeah.
But there was some pretty disturbing stuff. The contents, when they were talking about food and walnut sauce, and they mocked us and made fun of all that. Well, all I want you to do is just tell me what you were talking about.
Yeah.
If John Podesta,
they don't even address
John Podesta has like the best recipe for some kind of it was some recipe, let's put that out there. Let's
Yeah.
let's talk about that. Tell me
Let's-
what a
let's
pizza
make it
related
and see
map
what it
on a
tastes
handkerchief is, and tell me why Uma Abedin was monitoring stories on Laura Silsby, and then Bill Clinton gets on a plane and goes down there and helps produce her. Let's talk about the facts.
Bill Clinton does that. One of the first things he does is Haiti had just had an earthquake in 2010. Laura Silsby's down there with these missionaries, and they're going to rescue these kids. So she gets caught at the Dominican Republic border. They share the island of Hispaniola. She gets busted by border guys in the Dominican Republic with 33 kids. And it turns out 22 of them are still, their parents are still back in Haiti.
Yeah, they're not even
They weren't orphans. What was going to happen to those kids if they weren't busted? And then Bill Clinton swoops in, and now Bill Clinton comes in as he's just been appointed a special UN representative to come help Haiti deal with their earthquake.
Right.
And so one of the first things he does in his position is she had 10 other people with her, Laura Silsby did. He got them released immediately.
Right.
She was in jail for about 6 months while the trial was coming up. She got a slap on the wrist, and then she got out immediately. So the only time served was her waiting.
And then she goes to work in
judgment.
America at Alert Sense, which is the alerts for Amber Alerts. I don't know. I've seen those. I don't know. I can't. After Epstein was killed on Suicide Watch, I can't dispel anything. I don't know. I've seen the pictures of what the suspects look like, and they look an awful lot like, I just don't know. I can't say. But there's nothing wrong with asking the question. The whole thing about Haiti, and it's interesting because the problems with Haiti have been going on for so long, and I wish there were more people in here so I could get more input on this.
You know what?
If you look at the beginnings of Haiti, and I'm not going to go into this because what I'm thinking in my head is total conspiracy theory. But yesterday I went to the capital of Tennessee, which is Nashville, because our state is trying to pass their own heartbeat bill, and I met a few people and was talking to them and was introduced to a whole lot of new information.
And tell them
that's
also
all,
about what you found out about
the right to life. Yeah. But one thing, I was talking to somebody about the creation of Haiti, like their beginnings. Like, I don't understand why Haiti is such a great breeding ground for sex traffickers. They seem to think Haiti is like, it's like a coveted, they want those children. What is it about them? I don't know, but I'll tell you when we get off this video, and maybe on the next video after I've researched it, I will tell you what I'm thinking in my head, but it's too crazy. But anyway, so I go to the capital, Nashville. We were going to do a prayer walk. We were just going to be praying while our legislators were debating and talking about this bill. And it was too hot outside, so we actually got to go inside. And when we went inside, Planned Parenthood had they had a plan. They were going to bus a lot of people in, and they were just going to outnumber us. And we went in, and on all the seats were these flags that said "Bands off my body." And so they saved all these seats for Planned Parenthood, but they weren't there. There was like just these flags. So we moved the flags and we sat down. And we wore red in signifying life, like the heart, blood, life. And so it was so funny because when they realized that came in and they saw us, I wish I would have recorded them walking in, because they were like, oh, you could see the blood drain. They were like, oh, crap. But anyway, so Right to Life, Tennessee, I know that Right to Life is all over the country. You need to be paying attention to the organizations that you're giving money to, because just because they say right to life doesn't mean they're fighting for life. And what I learned yesterday, we have a really good chance of passing this heartbeat bill, and Right to Life Tennessee is against it. And we say, because it's on legal terms, that it's the worst strategy to come down since, I don't know when. What I learned, in my day there yesterday, was that Right to Life wants to just chip away at the edges. They just want to they don't want to attack the problem. And they're not there really to fight for life. They're there to fight for their life. I'll just say it. Why am I not? But I'll just say it. It just sounded to me like they're just like Al Sharpton and his
they don't want to fix the problem because then they'll be out of a job and all the donations will stop.
And
So-
I talked to somebody who's worked with Right to Life, and I won't go into the details, but just judging from her experiences, that's what I took away from it. They're not really there to solve the problem. And the problem comes in with our legislators that Right to Life has such a prestigious and,
Thank
Oh.
you, Regina.
you know, thank you very much. Yeah. They have this prestigious, people think, oh, they're there to fight for life, and people donate a lot of money to them. And the legislators there, though, like if you want a bill passed, you've got to have the approval of Right to Life. Like they're that powerful.
Yeah.
So the problem is you've got this. They have a stranglehold, kind of like the lobbyists up in D.C. in the
Oh yeah,
swamp.
and it's the same in the state capitals. And actually, the state capitals, it's a lot less visible because I just think it's some areas, some state capitals are not as transparent as others, and I think it's just insidious everywhere. And that's why I was saying earlier about on these sides, forget about Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, libertarian.
Are you in Tennessee?
So forget about the sides are good and evil, and that's it.
Yeah.
These guys in the capitals and these guys in DC in your state capitals, they're playing parts.
They're playing. It's
And
all
I'm telling you, I've got a Republican representative here in
Okay, I'll tell you in a
Mississippi.
second.
Mississippi, and I'm hugely disappointed in the guy because there's a lot of terrible things happening in this country, and he's just silent.
It's like they don't even.
And they're
they're not
playing a
in
role.
tune.
They're not even
Like if you look at their Twitter accounts, they're
their
not
Twitter,
tweeting
their
anything
Facebook accounts. They're just going,
that matters.
"Oh, it was great to see the guys from VHA down here in DeSoto County. Great,
Right.
great to see you guys in DC. Thanks for coming by."
Yeah,
It's just
they don't really want to solve the problem. So when I'm down there, and they had 5 speakers, and they had David Fowler of Fact TN, which is a really great organization. I didn't know much about them before, and they had 4 speakers, and then they had the head of Right to Life. And let me tell you, David Fowler, oh my gosh, this dude is like a Scalia. He's just an intellect.
he was
He's
concise.
And he was tying. Everybody knows that the Roe v. Wade decision is based on bad law. Oh, me too.
All over the country.
The
man.
Republican leadership in Tennessee is much like the McCain line, Corker line, Alexander.
Yep.
It's much like that. But so anyway, David Fowler has this idea and he's not really fighting for the heartbeat bill because the heartbeat bill, what it's doing is it's saying once you've got a heartbeat, you can't take that life. But nobody can, it's an arbitrary, the data, when they're saying, okay, well, when you have a heartbeat, sometimes you can hear the heartbeat, sometimes you can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's an arbitrary date. And so what David Fowler did is he took Sandra Day O'Connor, who was, I think she was in on the decision, or maybe she was in on one of the appeals.
Maybe.
But anyway, she was talking about people using arbitrary dates, whether it's before the 3rd trimester
She
or
might have been in
after.
appellate court before she got to the Supreme Court.
And she said, you're talking about arbitrary dates here. We don't determine personhood. God does.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was using Sandra Day O'Connor's own words, and it was like I'd never seen them. I actually took pictures, and maybe I'll attach them to the comments on the Twitter.
Yeah.
But they had some brilliant speakers, and you could tell that we were winning because the Democrats were trying to do their pre-planned, attacks, and it was kind of like Kamala Harris when she was zinged by Tulsi Gabbard, like she just never recovered.
Yeah.
And then he had the head of Right to Life. I forget his name. He comes down the tail end, and he comes in and speaks. And I remember it was about 5 minutes, and I started falling asleep, and then I'm in on a group message, and my friends are texting me like, just shoot me now. Like, what the hell? And the thing about that is Republicans control. We have a Republican governor, House, and Senate. That whoever was leading that committee, he had control of who was going to speak. He knows all of those characters involved because you don't get to go speak there without speaking to him. He did that on purpose. You had these 4 great speakers, and then he had Buzzkill from Right to Life come and pour water on everything. this was a summer study, so it's like debate about the topic. It wasn't about the actual bill, which won't happen until session starts up in January. But it was good for us to see, because we can see who the obstacles are and take them out. And I can't take out right to life, but I can sure as hell tell people that they're not out
who they
there
say they
fighting
are.
for babies' lives.
It's just like bills that are named in Congress, the Patriot Act. There's
Right.
nothing patriotic about it. All it does is spy
The
on
National
Americans.
Defense, the NDAA, the National
Yeah.
Defense,
Authorization Act. Yeah.
which legalized our leaders being, America being able to propagandize the American public.
And to spy on us, and I mean, they can drone kill American citizens.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that, even if you do it across seas. But there's one more thing I want to tell you about, and I want you to Google if you get the chance, is this lady's name. Her name is Georgia Tann, Tann, Memphis. And she was a lady who trafficked and sold children in Memphis, Tennessee, which we're from Memphis. I'd never heard of her.
Never heard of her.
I had heard of Boss
Crump.
E.H. Crump.
And Boss Crump protected this lady
Yeah.
while she did this. They even, and you can Google and find more info about it, but it's been happening for decades. And one thing you'll see in all of our conspiracy queries that we had tonight that is common, especially with Dutroux and Epstein and this lady and just, other incidences throughout our past here recently, is that pedophilia is a common thread in all of this. And that's
And right now, where they're
scary.
trying to normalize it through Drag Queen Story Hour, and you've seen the videos of the drag queen that's teaching the 8-year-olds how to twerk at the public library.
You know what, guys, in every state, I know some of you, Johanna, I think you're up in Minnesota, and Mary Jane May, and you're here in Tennessee, and John, and you guys have kids, Blair, Josh Tucker, you guys have kids still in school. I want you to see what your public libraries are doing, and don't fall for this. They are sexualizing children. They're
grooming.
lauding and
They're
praising 11-year-old transsexuals dancing for money, just like strippers. This
We
is
would
not
be
what kids are.
outraged if we saw like one of our daughters, at a
Yes.
strip club. Like it's so sick. But
And that's not even the worst part, is that this got busted in Houston first because of Shannon
Oh.
Tracy. Shannon, was it Tracy?
Yeah.
Shannon busted him in Houston. She busted him because, and of course, the librarians try to hide this, and they try to hide their real identities. All you could see up in the front is their stage
Right.
names.
Yeah.
Strawberry Alarm Clock or
right.
whatever.
But some
But
Creative
some of these
people.
guys have been convicted pedophiles,
yeah.
and they're reading to children in libraries and teaching them how to dance. And
Yeah, and there's a big thing with them not doing the background checks on them, which you're supposed to do if you're going to be
there's been a couple more busted elsewhere in Texas,
right.
and they keep doing it. And this is a push from the American Library Association. They are pushing for this.
Right.
And I'm like, it's supposed to be about going to and get a great book and be able to read a book.
Right.
And another thing that they found is that in a lot of these libraries, there is a section for pornography for teens and preteens that they can find it. And you need to be looking for this stuff,
Yeah. Because it's
because
everywhere.
pornography is another way to just destroy people and take them down and make them subservient.
Distract them, take their energies elsewhere. I mean, it's not a healthy. If you look at the actual psychology of it, how it rewires your brain. Forget the whether it's moral or immoral.
You can look on Twitter for Shannon Tracy. Or is it Tracy Shannon?
Tracy Shannon. I think it's Tracy Shannon.
But then also at Safe
Yeah.
Libraries,
Mass Resistance Houston. Tracy Shannon.
Tracy Shannon's on Twitter, and at Safe Libraries on Twitter. He's
Yeah.
done a lot of stuff on it. He has a blog where he's posted a lot of stories about this. He's fighting this.
He does a lot of FOIAs where he's getting.
And
these
Shannon's been
libraries.
doing it too, and they fight. Just like the FBI and the Justice Department is fighting the Freedom of Information Act request from all kinds of people in D.C. these states, the state's attorneys general do the same thing in all these different states. They fight it too.
Right.
They don't want you to see the stuff that's happening.
Right.
We-
And then when you talk about, and that's what they do on all of this stuff. So do your work, and instead of trying to have a back and forth or trying to convince people with facts, whenever they start talking about, they call you a conspiracy theorist, take one of these stories that we've talked about to you, reply to them and say, so was that a conspiracy theory like, Operation Mockingbird? Was it?
And we stole this title from Owen Benjamin.
Yeah.
He's banned from Twitter because
He's banned from a lot of places.
and Facebook, and he's banned from Twitter. Is back when the transgender stuff started,
Yeah.
and they were talking about 5-year-olds choosing their gender. He said this is child abuse, and they said, "Oh, we can't have that."
They wanted him to apologize, and he wouldn't do it.
But it's
Why is that?
it's okay to have Antifa on Twitter, and
It's okay for
all these
Raisa
violent
Aslan to
terrorists.
have 15-year-olds punchable face up there. That tweet
Yeah.
is still up to this day.
eradicate people.
Yeah.
All the stuff he said. What's the girl? There's several, and there's one girl tweeting lately just constantly. She hates white people.
Oh, the
She
Sarah,
can't-
right? She's
Yeah,
the Indian
Saira or
girl,
whatever. She hates white
and
people.
she's allowed to just
So say
spread
how
that
much she
hate.
hates. And you know what? Leave her up. But leave everybody else up too if you're going to do that.
right. Leave everybody up. That's what I want. But anyway, that's all we have. I hope that you'll Google.
And you know
some
what?
Of these
Even
things.
if you don't Google specific ones that we mentioned tonight, just Google conspiracy theory, and then just a lot of places have put their top 10s up, or some of them are to make fun of you.
Yeah.
But check them out because
Or do Google, conspiracy theory and where it was created, and just read
the
about
CIA
how the
started the use. The
It was a
CIA came up with the nomenclature for that.
Hi, Katie. They're trying to silence us. The whole point of them calling you a conspiracy theorist is to silence you, and we don't want you to do that. And don't fight these people with, they come at you mocking at you something. You come at them with a fact that came from one of their mainstream media publications, like the Manhattan Project or Iraq, the babies thrown out of incubators. So, so was that a conspiracy? Like this was a conspiracy? They have a strategy of defeating us. We need to have a strategy of defeating them. It's psychological warfare, and it can be used on them too.
Yeah. And don't cuck like Sean Hannity did with Frito.
Sean Hannity, Matt Gaetz, Anthony Scaramucci.
Some people might be celebrating that Anthony Scaramucci, who was a former huge Trump supporter, is now working for CNN. And what is his next show going to be? I meant to show you that. He's going to be with Omarosa. They're going to have a show
Oh my gosh, are you
in a couple of nights. I think it said 7 p.m.
No, I didn't know that.
Eastern. And it's so obvious.
He's also got some
But
Chinese.
this is what I was going to
business
say is
stuff
you always
going on.
follow the money. Anthony Scaramucci's
Mhm.
company, his investment company, was trying to sell to the
Mhm.
Chinese here recently, which means he needs money.
Right.
So Anthony Scaramucci's trying to sell his investment group to the Chinese. That fell through very recently. He doesn't talk about that when he's tweeting about his change of heart.
And it's weird because what he's tweeting now, it seems like just this total 180, really quick.
And you can look back in history and see what CNN said about Anthony Scaramucci in the past. But now
Yeah.
he's right there.
He's right on board, and they're with him.
I quoted him in one of our scopes about a year ago.
Oh, yeah.
I said Anthony Scaramucci was interviewed, and he said, "I want to help Trump cheat history." He wants to help Trump cheat history, so he goes from that to CNN, and that relates to. He was talking about how democracies like ours usually have a lifespan of about 240 years.
Right, I forgot
Well,
about that.
we're at about the 250 mark, and we are decadent.
We're getting there.
kind of falling apart, and he was wanting to help us turn things around and
Right.
reboot the republic and
Yeah,
get
what
back going
what
again.
changed? What changed?
The Chinese didn't buy his company.
Right. It's kind of sad.
But the CNN will pay you whatever they need because
So, yeah.
CNN is not a for-profit institution. They're being subsidized somewhere else.
Yeah.
They don't care about losing money.
Everybody is. The right to life, everybody is. Definitely.
Scaramucci is a mooch.
Yeah, maybe
He's a mooch.
maybe that needs to be a negative for him instead of
Yeah.
very cool, positive.
Well-
Anyway, so that's about all we have for this time. We'll be back next month, September. I still can't remember.
13th. There's only
13th.
there's
There's
only
only 4 on the
I
15th.
think it's three or four on the 15th, but the Ides are usually on the 13th.
And I have a goal. Okay, so if you're watching this, I hope you'll go back and watch last month's scope, which was about Jeffrey Epstein before he had his assisted suicide.
And last month is on my Facebook page up top. It's on my Twitter page up top.
Right, and Mark Dutroux. And the thing about so Epstein is like our Mark Dutroux. And the only difference is Dutroux is sitting in jail, and the bigger pedophile ring that is huge, that probably goes up into the royal family and a whole, really powerful, important people, is still protected and it's still going on. And so I have this hope that the Dutroux pedo ring, like that whole investigation, just like Epstein, will be reopened. It can't be the same thing because
It can't end there because there are so many. And the thing with Dutroux is just a glaring thing with that is that he was put in prison for kidnapping and raping young girls, and he was let out, and then a bunch of other girls were killed. The first round, he didn't kill them. He just kidnapped them and raped them. Him and his wife. She's out, by the way.
She's out.
The wife that helped him
Everybody's
is out.
out except Mark Dutroux, whatever his name is.
So, I mean, these guys produce more victims, and we don't. It's a thing. It's a common theme with Mueller not going after them and
Right.
throughout his career. It's a common theme with a lot of our U.S. attorney or Justice Department.
Being
I mean,
partial to
When
them.
they want to, they freaking do a full-blown raid at M16s in old women's faces, but they are not doing it to pedophiles.
Yeah, look at what they did to Paul Manafort in the middle of the night,
Brother and-
terrorizing his wife.
Brother and sister. So when they want to, they can make things happen. But when they don't, they're covering up for a lot of people.
Right.
Good for you, Katie.
So go back and watch that one from last month because I have a goal. I don't.
Oh, you got to look at the whole thing, Don. We talked about the Clintons, man. They're tied into all this. But I want to tell you about the Clintons. Is what I'm starting to believe more and more is that somebody higher than the Clintons are running this stuff. They're in their own little zone. Dutroux in Belgium was in his little area.
Right.
And there's certain
And
nodes
you
and
have all
stuff
these
that happen.
pockets because you've got the Hollywood ring, you have the Bryan Singers. These are convicted people. You've got the Hollywood ring. You've got the.
But the thing is
BC
what
Swamp.
I think people are more. There are people that are more in the know than us are probably more afraid of the people that the Clintons report to. I don't think the Clintons killed Epstein.
I don't know. It's much bigger
And
than.
he may
Clinton.
not even be dead. Who knows?
Who knows how much longer the Clintons are going to be here? Whatever network that can take people out, can take an Epstein out. That's still going to
But
be
you
there.
know what? And I have a final. This you can call this a conspiracy theory because it is a theory. But I'm just wondering if Donald Trump has the authority to declassify anything he wants because declass ends with the president, and he's given authority to the attorney general to declassify a lot of stuff. I wonder if he's letting all this RussiaGate stuff and all because
They are.
what a lot of you guys probably are not aware of is that Trump Justice Department. Mine quit.
Huh.
The Trump Justice Department has been prosecuting pedophile rings throughout the country for over 2 years. There have been rings busted here in Memphis,
Yeah.
and it's not hitting the media, but there is major pedophile rings going down all over, and they're worldwide. They're doing these arrests, and they happen about every few weeks or so.
Right.
And I see little blurbs in some papers, but you can't find it in any mainstream media.
I know.
When you go into the story, sometimes it's like 1,500 people arrested at once.
And you'll see like 100 children rescued from. If on Twitter, if you subscribe to the DOJ, the Department of Justice, they will release when they've gone and made an arrest, and it's happening several times a week, all over the country. And I'm like you. I wonder if he's not
So
under
my
the radar.
conspiracy, let's still say query for the night, is what if he doesn't care about the Russia crap? He doesn't care about being called a white supremacist, and like that makes us all white supremacists
Right.
because we support him. He's just letting them go after that. You know, he's got the little laser pointer, and all the cats are going after it.
Right.
In the meantime, over the last 2 years, I don't know how many thousands of pedophile people have been busted by the Justice Department. There's something major going on with that stuff. And I'm telling you, a lot of this stuff going back a couple of decades, the common thread is evil people abusing children.
And it goes back to the days of Babylon and the Canaanites. You know, there's nothing new under the sun.
Right.
That Georgia Tan lady that I was telling y'all to Google in
She
Memphis,
died in 1950, right before the investigation.
3
was complete.
decades. She was free to sell children to the highest bidder, and the mayor of Memphis was fine.
Boss Crump helped her out.
You need to Google it. I was blown away. We might talk more about that next.
Yeah.
Wow.
But guys, you know, look at the beginning of this one if you missed it, but look at last week, like Yvonne said, and we go into Epstein and Dutroux a lot, and we go into Laura Silsby more in regards to and that ties into the Clintons as well.
And if the Epstein case can break wide open, the Dutroux case, and I know that people have sued to unseal, you know, Mike Cernovich sued to unseal the documents in Epstein, and we don't have that same kind of scenario going on Dutroux, and I don't know how that thing could be broken back wide open, but I just want to use God's power of the tongue and speak that into existence, that that's going to be broken back open, because
somebody
we
will
can't
see
keep
it and
letting them hurt children like this and not pay a price for it. So watch that Periscope, and we will be back next month.
all right, thanks guys. I don't know why my video stopped.